أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ياسين والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم تنزيل العزيز الرحيم لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباءهم فهم غافلون لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان فهم مقمحون وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون وسواء عليهم أنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشره بمغفرة وأجر كريم. إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين. واضرب لهم مثلا أصحاب القرية إذ جاءها المرسلون إذ أرسلنا إليهم 2 فكذبوهما فعززنا بثالث فقالوا إنا إليكم مرسلون قالوا ما أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء إن أنتم إلا تكذبون. قالوا ربنا يعلم إنا إليكم لمرسلون وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين. قالوا إنا تطيرنا بكم لئن لم تنتهوا لنرجمنكم وليمسنكم منا عذاب أليم. قالوا طائركم معكم أئن ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون. وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون. وما لي لا أعبد الذي فطرني وإليه ترجعون. أتخذ من دونه آلهة إن يردني الرحمن بضر لا تغني عني شفاعتهم شيئا ولا ينقذون. إني إذا لفي ضلال مبين. إني آمنت بربكم فاسمعون. قيل ادخل الجنة قال يا ليت قومي يعلمون بما غفر لي ربي وجعلني من المكرمين. وما أنزلنا على قومه من بعده من جند من السماء وما كنا منزلين إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم خامدون. يا حسرة على العباد ما يأتيهم من رسول إلا كانوا به يستهزئون. ألم يروا كم أهلكنا قبلهم من القرون أنهم إليهم لا يرجعون. وإن كل لما جميع لدينا محضرون. وآية لهم الأرض الميتة أحييناها وأخرجنا منها هبا فمنه يأكلون. وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملته أيديهم أفلا يشكرون. سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون. وآية لهم الليل نسلخ منه النهار فإذا هم مظلمون. والشمس تجري لمستقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم. والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالأرجون القديم. لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون. وآية لهم أنا حملنا ذريتهم في الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثله ما يركبون. وإن نشأ نغرقهم فلا صريخ لهم ولا هم ينقذون إلا رحمة منا ومتاعا إلى حين. وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون. وما تأتيهم من آية من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين. وإذا قيل لهم انفقوا مما رزقكم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا أنطعم من لو يشاء الله وأطعمه إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين. ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون. ونفخ في الصور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون. قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم وأزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون سلام قولا من رب رحيم وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون ألم أحد إليكم يا بني آدم أن لا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين وأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم ولقد أضل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تعقلون هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون ولو نشاء لتمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنى يبصرون ولو نشاء لمسخناهم على مكانتهم فما استطاعوا مضيا ولا يرجعون ومن نؤمهره ننخس في الخلق أفلا يعقلون وما علمناه الشعر وما ينبغي له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينذر من كان حيا ويحق القول على الكافرين أولم يروا أنا خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لها مالكون وذللناها لهم فمنها ركوبهم ومنها يأكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلهم ينصرون لا يستطيعون نصرهم وهم لهم جند محضرون فلا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون أولم يرى الإنسان أنا خلقناه من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم مبين وضرب لنا مثلا ونسي خلقه قال من يحيي العظام وهي رميم قل يحييها الذي أنشأها أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم الذي جعل لكم من الشجر الأخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون أوليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يخلق مثلهم بلى وهو الخلاق العليم إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون صدق الله العلي العظيم.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين.
بر محمد وآل محمد صلوات. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. اے خدا سیدہ فاطمہ خلد سے دیکھتی ہے کربلا مصطفیٰ کی آل کا گھر تمام جل گیا اے خدا مصطفیٰ مرتضیٰ اے خدا بال کھول سیدہ دیکھتی ہے خاک پر لاشا اس جوان کا جو شبیہ مصطفیٰ، جو شباب مرتضیٰ، حرمت اذان جو حسین کا جوان جو، برچھی جس کے سینے میں تاج گر پیوست تھی، کربلا کی خاک پر خون اس کا تھا رواں، جو حسین کا جوان، جو شبیہ مصطفیٰ، مصطفیٰ کی آل کا گھر تمام جل گیا، اے خدا اے خدا اے خدا اے خدا، اور سینہ زن ہے سیدہ، دیکھتی ہے خلد سے، ذوالجنا کے پاؤں سے، کس طرح سکینہ لپٹی رو رہی ہے زار زار، اور پھوپھی ہے اشک بار، کہہ رہی ہے گھوڑے سے، ارے میرے بابا کو نہ لے کے جا خدا کے واسطے، کہ جو گیا وہ لوٹ کر آ سکا نہ، ہائے ہائے سکینہ غم کسے سنائے، کر رہی ہے التجا، مصطفیٰ کی آل کا گھر تمام جل گیا، اے خدا اے خدا اے خدا اے خدا، اور دل فغار سیدہ دیکھتی ہے خلد سے، گود میں حسین کی ایک صغیر چاند سا پیاس سے نڈھال تھا، مصطفیٰ کی آل تھا، حرملا کے تیر نے پیاس کو صغیر کی پل میں ایک بجھا دیا، اور پھر حسین نے خون اس صغیر کا اپنے منہ پہ مل لیا، اور تڑپ کے یہ کہا، ارے مصطفیٰ کی آل کا گھر تمام جل گیا، اے خدا اے خدا اے خدا اے خدا، اور سیدہ تڑپ گئی دیکھ کر زمین پر اپنے دل کے چین کو، سر کٹا پڑا ہوا ریت پر ہے خون تر، لاشائے حسین کو ماں نے سینہ پیٹ کر ارے دی صدا رسول کو کہ آئیے گا بابا جان، دیکھیے بطول کا گھر تمام کربلا میں کس طرح اجڑ گیا، خیمہ ہر ایک لٹ گیا، مصطفیٰ کی آل کا گھر تمام جل گیا، اے خدا اے خدا اے خدا اے خدا۔ या जनाब सैयदा हम गुलाम आपके पुरसा देने आए हैं। आपके हुजूर हम नौह मरसिए के साथ अश्क अपने लाए हैं। या जनाब सैयदा कबूल हो जो लिखा सफदर ने ये नौहा है हुसैन का। इमरान ने पढ़ा है जो लफ्ज लफ्ज खून में तय है बैन का। हर्फ हर्फ की सदा मुस्तफ़ा की आल का घर तमाम जल गया। ए खुदा ए खुदा ए खुदा ए खुदा। सैयदा फातिमा खुल्द से देखती है करबला। मुस्तफ़ा की आल का घर तमाम जल गया। ए खुदा ए खुदा। पर मोहम्मद व आलि मोहम्मद सलावत। अल्लाहुम्मा सल्लि अला मोहम्मद व आलि मोहम्मद। अल-फातिहा।
बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम। अम्मा युजीबुल मुस्तर्र इज़ा दआ व यक्शिफुस-सू'। 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 अल्लाहुम्मा इन्ना नस्अलुका व नद'ऊक बिस्मिक अल-अज़ीम अल-अअज़म अल-अअज़्ज़ अल-अजल्ल अल-अकरम। या अल्लाह या या अल्लाह 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 या या महमूद बिहक़्क़ मुहम्मद या आली बिहक़्क़ अली या फातिर बिहक़्क़ फातिमा या मुहसिन बिहक़्क़ الحسن يا قديم الإحسان بحق الحسين انصر شيعة الحسين يا الله انصر شيعة المؤمنين يا الله اللهم اكشف هذه الغمة عن هذه الأمة يا الله اقضي حوائج شيعة الحسين يا الله شافي وعافي المرضى من شيعة الحسين يا الله اللهم اقض حوائج المؤمنين يا الله آمن شيعة الحسين في مشارق الأرض ومغاربها يا الله اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج واجعلنا من شيعته وأنصاره وأعوانه والمستشهدين بين يديه اللهم كن لوليك حجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آله في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم أرنا الطريق والطلعة الرشيدة والغرة الحميدة واكحل أنظارنا بنظرة منا إليك. اللهم نقسم عليك بالزهراء فاطمة إلا ما جعلتنا من شيعة الزهراء ورزقتنا شفاعة الزهراء يا الله يا الله يا الله، لقضاء الحوائج ولشفاء المرضى ولكشف هذه الغمة عن هذه الأمة ولتعجيل فرج مولانا صاحب العصر والزمان، وإلى أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات لا سيما أرواح أموات شهداء البحرين والشهداء من المؤمنين والمؤمنات. رحم الله من يقرأ السورة المباركة الفاتحة مع الصلوات.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. الحمد لله رب العالمين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين، واللعنة على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله تعالى في محكم كتابه الحكيم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وأما من خاف مقام ربه ونهى نفس عن الهوى فإن الجنة هي المأوى. آمنا بالله، صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أعظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم بذكرنا المصائب سيدة زهراء سلام الله عليها. May Allah increase in our reward for the commemoration of the difficulties of Sayyidah Zahra salamullahi alayha. In yesterday's discussion, we began to discuss the importance of remembering our akhirah when making decisions. That a successful life is one that is judged by its completion and what goal it achieves. And our goal is nothing less than Jannah. The idea of knowing that we should consider the hereafter in our decision-making process is something that requires a strong will to be able to prioritize the most important factors in our decision-making. When we look at man as the creation of Allah and what gives man his unique status, the most unique and greatest status that man, insan, possesses is that he has irada, he has a will. And that this will that makes him unique in Allah's creation is the strengthening of this will that allows us to make good decisions and to ensure that our decisions reflect what is the best outcome for us to have a successful life. We may very well know at times what the best thing to do is and what is best for our akhirah, but sometimes we don't have the willpower to prefer our akhirah to dunya. Today's discussion is how do we strengthen our willpower, and we'll break this down into three parts of our discussion. One, understanding what is the irada and where does it come from in man's creation. Two, what are the steps that go into the process of bringing an irada about into reality? And finally, how do we strengthen a weak will or a weak irada to ensure that we always make the best decision possible? In this sequence, if we begin our discussion with step one, where does the irada come from? Or what is the irada? We've mentioned before that man is the composite of both a spirit and a body. This spirit, this ruh that comes from Ayyam-e-Arwah, or from the realms of the spirits, is one of the creations of Allah that is aware of the presence of Allah and has the knowledge of Allah. The same way that we say the malaika are beings that worship Allah and are aware of His might and greatness, as Allah has not covered anything from their eyes of the reality of Allah's creation, that from looking at the greatness of Allah's creation and having nothing, no curtain before their eyes, they clearly see the might of Allah and the greatness of Allah, and they worship Him for it. So is the ruh in its state, in its spiritual phase, something that is busy in the hamd and thana and in the praise and worship of Allah and the glorification of Allah, because it can acknowledge and recognize the greatness of Allah before it. And that the ruh is something that is focused on the worship of Allah and the knowing of Allah. On the other hand, the body is something of a physical element that Allah even describes in its creation, where we see Allah describes, He says, ثُمَّ خَلَقْنَا النُّطْفَةَ عَلَقَةً فَخَلَقْنَا عَلَقَةً مُضْغَةً فَخَلَقْنَا مُضْغَةً عِظَامًا فَكَسَوْنَا الْعِظَامَ لَحْمًا ثُمَّ أَنْشَأْنَاهُ خَلْقًا آخَرَ فَتَبَارَكَ اللَّهُ أَحْسَنُ الْخَالِقِينَ. In this verse, Allah is describing of the process of the creation of the human body, that we took this seed, we made it a clot. Then we took this clot and we made it a lump of flesh. Then this lump of flesh, we covered it, we made within it a bone, and then we clothed these bones with flesh, with skin. And then we caused it to grow into another creation. So blessed is Allah, the best of the creators. This verse, Allah talks about the coming about of the human being, of the physical self of the human being, and He ends the process of the development of the human being in showing that ثُمَّ أَنْشَأْنَاهُ خَلْقًا آخَرَ. Then in it we created and we caused it to grow within it another creation. As this human body comes about, its developmental phases at one point resemble that of a plant, then of an animal, and then finally it comes to the creation of a human being. That creation of the human being and the development of the human being is the point at which Allah attaches the spirit to the physical form. This attachment of the spirit of the ruh to the physical form happens at approximately 12 weeks, where Allah is now describing ثُمَّ أَنْشَأْنَاهُ خَلْقًا آخَرَ. And then we began in it a new growth. This new growth that Allah is describing in this instance is the growth and the development of what we call the nafs within the human being. The nafs is what is generated when the spirit is attached to the human being and brings the human being into its human life. This nafs serves the purpose that that soul which only worships Allah and has acknowledgement of Allah, in this body that has physical needs, that when the two of them attach, the nafs is the one that presents the interface that brings the soul to animate and to focus on this body. Which is why in the nafs we see the desires and the emotions that are present within a human being. That these that come into existence by the presence of the ruh are the attributes that keep the spirit attached to the body and focused on the needs of the body. Which is why one of the instructions that we've given is of jihadun nafs, to struggle against the nafs, to struggle against the self. The self is all of those desires that are associated with the physical presence, or the desires of the body, or the desires of this life. And to give the presence of the spirit a place in the body so that it has the ability to worship Allah through this body and to focus on its growth and development. The irada, one way of explaining the will of man is that spiritual presence that overcomes the nafs and brings into existence an affair or a point or a need that is desired by the spirit. When we look at willpower, this unique element to overcome all of our baser instincts to bring something into existence is the ultimate sign of humanity, is the ultimate sign of the authority of Allah. Now, once we've understood that what is this irada, that this is the aspect of bringing into existence the willpower to overcome the barriers that are present and to give voice to the internal desires that exist within man, there's a process by which this will is expressed. for a man to use his will, he has to first go through 5 stages. The first stage of, for example, using your will to bring an event into existence is the imagination of what you desire. My desire, for example, the mental image that I need to have for something to come into existence is that I need to first have an idea of what I would like to achieve or what my mindset is for. So I picture myself, for example, listening to this majlis. I picture myself eating a delicious food. I picture myself worshiping Allah. Whichever one of these you want to pick, you can pick. The idea is I've given you 3 paths that you can go down. Once I have an image in my mind of something that I would like to achieve, the next thing that I need to do, or step 2 of this process, is that I realize or I ponder over and I acknowledge the benefits of this action. The benefits of, for example, attending the majlis, sitting with my friends, listening and learning something good, being in a position where I earn thawab. The benefits are the acknowledgement of the benefits that eating, for example, something tasty or delicious, the appreciation that if I was to accomplish this action, I would enjoy the flavor, the act of worshiping Allah, the acknowledging of the benefits that Allah will reward me, my creator will be pleased with me for worshiping him. All of these acknowledgements are the second phase, that once I've created an image in my mind, I need to understand what are the benefits that I could attain from this action. The third step is to desire that benefit. That it's not enough that I know that something good will happen, that I want that something good to happen to me. I want that something good for myself. To have a desire for this goodness is what my next step has to be. Once now I have a desire for the goodness, once I have an image in my mind and I know the benefits and now I desire them, I want them. My mind submits that this is something good to have. I should have this. The fourth step is to overcome the obstacles to attaining this item. For example, the obstacle to attaining a good majlis and listening to a good majlis and having the thawab is going out in the cold. The obstacle to overcome is the distractions. Today, when we're listening to majalis at home, the obstacle I have to overcome is the distractions of what's on the internet, what other things I can push, what are the other things going on in the other room, what's on the TV that I could play with the kids, I could be sleeping. All of these are my obstacles that I need to overcome, that the benefit that I want to derive is greater than all of the other things that I could be doing or all of the other things that I could be enjoying. The fifth step is to develop what's called azima, to have resolve, to not be distracted by the other distractions that come into play. That now that when I've made the decision that the cold won't bother me or that I won't focus on anything else because the benefit is something that I desire and the benefit is worth having of this action, now my resolve is that I will focus on this until I achieve it. Once I have completed these 5 steps from imagination to developing the resolve within me to achieve this, now my irada, my will comes into effect. One of the definitions of what is a will is the intention of your brain to make your body move. This is what a will is, that utilizing the tools and the resources that are present with me and achieving something that my brain has motivated my body to achieve. In usul al-fiqh, it's explained as having a'malul qudra, to have an ability that I possess and to use that ability that I possess is what we call irada. That once I go through these phases, I now have the ability to execute and achieve the goal that I want. Now, once I understand the process that I need to go through, the third phase that comes in of our discussion is understanding that it's possible to have a weak irada or a weak will. Some people, for example, they may acknowledge all of the benefits. They may acknowledge all of the great things. They know it's good to have, but they can't seem to enforce in themselves the ability to articulate that will and achieve their goal. they have sometimes what is a weak resolve. For example, a person who tries to quit smoking. He says, I keep trying, but I can't seem to make myself commit to it. Or for example, we have a person who came to our sixth Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And he says that, Yabna Rasulullah, I have a habit that I eat teen, I eat clay. Help me, that how do I overcome this bad habit of wanting to eat clay? And the Imam replies, Malaka al-azima, you don't have a strong will, you don't have a resolve that's present. You have to strengthen your resolve. If you had a stronger resolve, you would then be able to overcome this difficulty easily. We see that Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam talks about this resolve frequently. He says, La khayra fi azmi bila hazmi. That there is no goodness, there is nothing that can be achieved by resolve without having hazm, without having determination to achieve it. This is the process where Amir al-Mu'mineen is teaching. If you want your irada to be strong and your goals to be achieved, your resolve has to be firm, and you have to have determination for that resolve to be firm. Amir al-Mu'mineen continues, he says, ضَادُ التَّوَانِي بِالْعَزْمِ. That's overcome your materialistic instinct by having a strong resolve. This is where we see when Allah discusses it in the verse that we began our conversation with, وَأَمَّا مَنْ خَافَ مَقَامَ رَبِّهِ نَهَا نَفْسَ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ. This, Allah is describing in him for who fears to stand in the presence of his Lord. He is the one and forbids the soul from low desires. This is that need that we have to strengthen our resolve, to have a strong resolve. Amir al-Mu'mineen similarly points out, he says, Man qawiya hawahu dha'ufa azmahu. That the baser desires, when they are strong, that your resolve is weakened. Now, our goal is, how do we strengthen this resolve? How do we strengthen this willpower to achieve the goals that we have, so that we can be amongst those who are naha nafsa anil hawa? And Allah continues this, فَإِنَّ جَنَّةَ هِيَ الْمَعْوَى. That when we have the ability to forbid ourselves from our desires, and our resolve is strengthened and our irada is strong, then Allah explains, He says, then surely the garden, that is the abode. This is exactly relating to our topic yesterday, where we talked about the goal of man is to get to heaven. That should be one of our main, or the main factor we consider when making decisions. And to make the Jannah our goal in our decision, we have to overcome our desires and have a strong will, and we have to forbid ourselves from these baser instincts. And this brings us into step 3. Once we've understood how that the will operates, and we want to have a strong will, that what are the steps that we can take to strengthen our will? The ulama of nafs, or the ulama of spirituality, have explained and given us 3 or 4 steps that we'll discuss today in strengthening and improving our irada, our will, and how do we make sure that we can achieve the goals that we set for ourselves and overcome our instincts. The first of these is what's referred to as talqeen al-nafs. Talqeen literally translates to remind, to repeat. Talqeen al-nafs talks about the idea that to attain a goal, we have to constantly go through and think about it and constantly remind ourselves about the goal that we want to achieve. This becomes an important step of ensuring that we stay focused and our mindset is settled that something is important to us and it deserves the priority of our intention. For example, the process of talqeen al-nafs, if one desires that they should pray Salat al-Fajr in the morning, we would say that they need to constantly remind themselves about the importance of it. They don't just need to think about it at the moment when they wake up, but rather even before they go to sleep, they have to go to the process of reminding themselves and remembering the points that are important. And reminding themselves throughout the day about, how did I feel when I missed my Fajr yesterday? I don't want to miss my Fajr again. Salatul Fajr is important for the mu'min to perform. That it's important that we stay focused on this and achieve this goal. That constant reminding of ourselves, the constant internal conversation with ourselves is what tells me that something is important and deserves to be treated as a priority. The same is true in our conversation yesterday, that the preference of akhirah. We can't forget about our akhirah. We want our akhirah to be part of our decision-making process. Because my goal is akhirah and it's important, I constantly go through the process of talqeen al-nafs. I keep focusing on it. I keep remembering it. I keep bringing it to forefront of mind, whether it makes me happy or it makes me sad. Meaning that whether I believe that, for example, in the conversation about Fajr, that I missed Fajr today. Now, constantly thinking about the fact that I missed Salat al-Fajr makes me sad. That shouldn't be something that stops me from thinking about Salat al-Fajr and the importance of reading Salat al-Fajr, but rather it should add the emphasis to make sure that this item doesn't leave the focus of my mind. This is why talqeen al-nafs, the constant reminding, the constant pondering over and bringing to the forefront of mind and focusing is one of the ways that we achieve a goal. And the same is true of all of our goals, that if I want my irada for it to be strong on a subject, I have to constantly keep it to the forefront of my mind. I have to make it my priority and my focus. Go through the process of talqeen al-nafs. The second step that's recommended by the ulama of spirituality that's important for developing a strong irada is the importance of the community and the positive environment. A community that shares a goal and has the same focus and wants to achieve the same conclusion motivates all of its members to move together in one direction. In Islam, the benefit of the community is why Allah has promoted Salat al-Jama'ah so much. That even, for example, the blind man who lived far away from the masjid, it was said that even for you, it's important to go to the masjid for Salat al-Jama'ah, so much so that a rope or string should be set up that you can follow from your house so that you don't miss it. The importance of Salat al-Jama'ah, Salat al-Jum'ah, of Hajj, of all of these actions that are done in a community environment is to promote and support the good decisions that we want people to make. That Islam acknowledges that the overcoming of the nafs is difficult. So Islam made it mustahab, made it beneficial and rewarding for us to stay together with the community. And to remove the difficulties of the community, Allah made, for example, backbiting haram. The abuses of the community, Allah forbade, so that the community stays together, so that you have the benefit and the support system that you need to achieve your goal. Communal presence and the use of a positive environment is so important that it helps us overcome many difficulties. There are many various sins that can exist in an individual that are those that exist in the privacy and when they're alone. But the presence of a community is something that can help remove those because of the positive influences that are around. It's recommended that, for example, if you find yourself that you commit sins in private, don't spend time alone. Especially for our youth, with all of the variety of options that are present for them that lead them to paths of sin, whether that's through the internet, whether that's through negative influences, whether that's through all of the variety of social media and resources that exist out there that can create, for example, inferiority complexes, that can create depression, that can lead a child to the path of lying, that can lead a path to the child of forfeiting his faith. Don't let your child alone with these items. Don't leave your child alone with all of these tools and resources that can become distractions. Expose them to good environments. Expose them and keep them involved, that if they choose to utilize this type of media or it's available to them, whether it's social media, the internet, or other things, put them in a public environment. put them in the common areas, and allow them when others are sitting with them to use these devices, so as that positive environment, that community, prevents them from the whisperings of shaitan impacting and influencing them. This is why, to raise our children on the path of Islam, they need to have community around them. They need to have exposure to good examples around them that promote and give them confidence about their faith. The greatest danger to our children is that anonymity, where they are neither known as Muslim or they are not known to have any faith or values associated with them, and they can get lost in the mix of other beliefs and identities that are other than that of Islam. The constant exposure and the presence of Islam in their life, the positive community, will be something that will give them the confidence to exercise their will in following the religion of Islam. Whether we do that by, for example, having family over, by not sending them out into communities or society alone, giving them partners and friends and siblings who are moving with them and are aware of them and promote and protect them, or by utilizing our community, being present in the community, orchestrating events that focus on creating bonds in the community to keep our children together. All of these will help strengthen their willpower to do good, to stay away from sin and mistakes, and strengthen that internal desire to behave in the right direction. This is why the ulama of spirituality, the ulama of irfan, they teach us that this is an important aspect, that when you want to develop yourself, surround yourself with those who share your goal. Surround themselves who will motivate you to achieve goodness. The third area that it's recommended that we can develop and strengthen this willpower within us, that we can perform goodness with us, is the example that's provided that al-ladha fi adam al-ladha. The translation of this is that pleasure is found in the denying of pleasures. Now, what this is talking about is that there exists a spiritual pleasure that we achieve. And that spiritual pleasure that we achieve is by the denial of physical pleasures, by the reduction of those things that, for example, are the quick and easy satisfactions. We attain spiritual satisfaction. When Allah, for example, says, كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمْ الصِّيَامُ كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, that fasting was prescribed to you as it was prescribed to those before you, so that you may attain piety. It's to show you that this fasting is a process by which our physical desires are things that we abstain from in the interest of receiving the benefit of our spiritual desires. That our focal point to develop this is to focus on spiritual desires as opposed to physical desires. By denying, when you deny your physical desires, that Allah gives you and fulfills you in a spiritual way. And that this is something that we can focus on, that when we reduce, for example, the pleasures of dunya, the pleasures of the spirit increase, and when those increase, we strengthen our willpower to want these desires more, to want spiritual satisfaction more. And that gives us a stronger will, a stronger irada to chase that, because we have tasted the pleasure of that spiritual desire. That if you want to grow to greater levels of piety, go to that process by growing through levels of piety, by not simply jumping to that one extreme. The example of this is the istihbab, that min alamat al-mu'min khamsa, that we've learned from Imam al-Asghari, that the 5 signs of a mu'min, that one of them is that he prays 51 rakat a day. If a person was to go from 17 to 51 immediately, we would say that the jump is too big. You may be able to perform it for a short period of time, but you'll burn out from it. It will be too great of an item for you to contain within yourself by going from very simple to very extreme. So it's said that you do the gradual increase. You gradually abstain from your physical desires of your rest. You gradually abstain from your desires of your free time. And you focus on the desire of the spiritual pleasure. And as that spiritual pleasure increases, then your desire and your irada will strengthen to reach a greater level, and you will be able to attain that process. The fourth example, which is associated with the third, is that they say, look at the examples of those that came before you to have the strength and the role model to follow. Role models are a very important process of being able to achieve greatness. When we have someone to look up to who has set the correct example for us, it makes it easier that if they could achieve it, we can achieve it. To this end is why Allah sent the Anbiya and the Ayyam alayhim salam, so that they would be the role models of society and demonstrate how to achieve and what that success looks like. The ashab of the Ayyam alayhim salam, the pious individuals in history, are all there as role models for someone to look at, to learn from. And the greatest of these role models are personalities like the Ahlul Bayt. That when we see, for example, in Surah Al-Insan, the discussion, وَيُطْعِمُونَ الطَّعَامَ عَلَى حُبِّهِ مِسْكِينًا وَيَتِيمًا وَأَسِيرًا إِنَّمَا نُطْعِمُكُمْ لِوَجْهِ اللَّهِ لَا نُرِيدُ مِنْكُمْ جَزَاءً وَلَا شُكُورًا. That certainly we have fed you, we feed you out of the love of Allah. We feed the poor and the orphan and the captive. We don't want any reward from you. Certainly we do this to receive the pleasure of Allah or for Allah's sake. These verses of Surah Insan are talking about the process where the Ahlul Bayt gave up 3 days of their food after fasting. And they did not want a reward or thanks for it from people. It was not for the physical desires that they did this, but the spiritual desires that motivated them. And that their spiritual desire, إِنَّمَا نُطْعِمُكُمْ لِوَجْهِ اللَّهِ, we have fed you for the sake of Allah, for the desire from Allah. لَا نُرِيدُ مِنْكُمْ جَزَاءً وَلَا شُكُورًا. We don't want from you any reward or thanks for this action of feeding you. Was a demonstration of preference of what is with Allah is better than what man can have himself or receive in this world. The efforts that we exert in this world, no one can ever compensate us the way we deserve to be compensated for what we've sacrificed. So then don't ask from them, ask from Allah to compensate you. Turn to Allah for compensation. That spiritual satisfaction with Allah, the fulfillment with Allah is the desire that we should achieve. These examples teach us of how to strengthen our willpower. That if the Ahlul Bayt were those who could give away their food for 3 days, they could stay hungry. Then certainly I can do without my Starbucks latte this week and give, for example, aid to a poor person. I can do without purchasing a new car this year and go help someone go to Hajj this year. I can make sacrifices from my worldly pleasures with the interest of my pleasures of akhirah, as was done by the Ahlul Bayt, as was done by personalities like Sayyidah Khadija, who gave up all of her wealth, who they described at the time of her death had not enough money to purchase a kafan. But look at Sayyidah Khadija, that in that instance, when her death is near and she doesn't have even the money to buy a kafan, when she's seen weeping at the moment of her death, they said, "Oh Khadija, you're the wife of the Holy Prophet. Why are you crying in fear of death? Death should be nothing to you. For all that you've given, you should be certain of the fact that you will go to heaven." And the reply of Sayyidah Khadija is what breaks our heart. She said to the women who are around her, she says, "I'm not crying for myself or fear of my condition. I'm crying because of this 5-year-old girl that I'm leaving behind. This Fatima that I'm leaving behind, who is still but a child. Who will protect her and take care of her?" Famously, the narrators state that Sayyidah Khadija in this instance, she says, "The women of the Arab of Makkah, I have found them to be harsh and cruel. They have been rough to Sayyidah Khadija in her life. They refused to help her because she was the wife of the Prophet. They did not show her any kindness because of her affiliation with Islam. And Sayyidah Khadija was a woman of status, was a personality when she became a Muslimah. And she says, they were harsh with me. I worry about my Fatima, and I'm leaving behind a 5-year-old girl. Oh, ladies, ensure that the Arab women are not harsh with her. Ensure that no woman ever slaps my daughter Fatima. Oh, Bibi Khadija, you were the one who was worried that no woman should slap your daughter. But hi, if you had known that it was the men of the Arab, the harshest of them, who raised his hands to the face of your Fatima. Oh, Bibi Khadija, you did not know that the difficulties they placed on your daughter Fatima were so much that she said from her own mouth, when she complained, she said, Subbat alayya al-masaib, lo subbat ala al-ayam sirna layali. That there have been so many problems that have been poured over me, that had they been poured on days, those days would have turned into nights from the darkness of these difficulties. Oh, Bibi Khadija, you did not see your Fatima. You were worried that no woman should attack her, but she was attacked by many. And they performed such acts of difficulty upon her that after the Shahadat of Rasulullah, it said that they came to Imam Ali and they said, Oh Ali, Fatima cries day and night. Let her cry at night, but then forbid her from the day. Or forbid her from crying at night and allow her during the day. But this crying of both day and night is something we can't handle. Amir al-Mu'mineen, when he went to Sayyidah Zahra, he said to her, he said, Oh Zahra, the people of Medina have complained that your crying is too much to bear, that you cry day and night. Sayyidah Zahra in bitter anguish turned to Ali ibn Abi Talib and she said, Oh Ali, I am here for just a short time. My time on this earth is very limited. Why won't they let me cry for my father? I lost the greatest man in humanity was my father, and he has left me. And now they forbid me from weeping over him. Sayyidah Zahra, the next day what she did was she took Imam Hassan and Imam Hussain and she left and went outside past Jannatul Baqi, away from the town, where a tree grew, and she sat under that tree so that she could cry in peace and that it would not disturb the people. The people were so evil that they came in the middle of the night and they cut down that tree so that Zahra would not have shade in which she could weep. It said that the next day Amir al-Mu'mineen happened to go collect Fatima to bring her home. He found the faces of Hassan and Hussein red from the heat of the sun. He asked, Oh children, what happened to you? They said, Baba, they cut the tree under which Mama would used to cry. Our mother would weep there and they cut that tree from her. So Amir al-Mu'mineen built for her there a small shelter in which Zahra could sit and cry away from the town. And this became known as Baytul Ahzan, the house of sorrows, that was built only because the people would not give a place for the daughter of Rasulullah to weep. In this we see that's one of the ulama, Sheikh al-Hindi, who says, when I went to Hajj and after the event of Hajj, it was the days of Ghadir. I happened that I was given the miracle of seeing the 12th Imam. When all of the mu'mineen were happy and pleased on the day of Ghadir, I saw my 12th Imam without a smile on his face. I asked him, Yabna Rasulullah, isn't this a time to be happy? Shouldn't we be pleased on this day? Why are you not smiling and happy that this was the day of the announcement of your father's authority? Imam Zaman replied, he says, Oh Sheikh, after Bayt al-Ahzan, there is no house of happiness for us. After our mother Zahra's sorrows, we have no pleasure in this world. The sorrows of Sayyidah Zahra were so difficult that they said when she went to visit the grave of Rasulullah, she remembered the scent of Rasulullah that was the beautiful scent of Nabuwwat, that she lifted the sand from the grave of Rasulullah and tried to smell in it the smell of her father who she missed so dearly. And it was said that at this moment she experienced one of her great difficulties, that she said, "Oh Baba, you have left me alone where not even the sand can give me your scent anymore. Oh Sayyidah Zahra, for you this was the difficulty you bore. But hi Zainab in Karbala, that you sat by the grave of Rasulullah. Your daughter Zainab, the difficulties, al-Masa'ib. She is the one who on the day of Ashura, after the Shahadat of Imam al-Hussain, goes and sits at the body of Abu Abdullah and calls out, Ya Rasulullah, Hada Husaynun. This is your Hussein. Famously, she raised her hands to Allah, "Oh Allah, accept from us this great sacrifice." ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. يا الله بحق زهرا وأبيها وبعلها وبنيها وسر المستودع فيها. Oh Allah, by the right of Sayyidah Zahra, by the right of these tears, by the right of her father, her husband, her sons, and the secrets of Zahra, oh Allah, forgive our sins and cover our flaws. Oh Allah, give the thawab of this majlis to our marhumeen and all the mu'mineen who have passed away or are in difficulty. Ya Allah, by the mention of the masa'ib of Sayyidah Zahra, fulfill our hajat that we have come to you with. Oh Allah, make our children and our lineage from the upright supporters of Ali Muhammad and on the upright religion of Ali Muhammad. Oh Allah, hasten the reappearance of the remainder of Zahra. Return to us our Imam and make us from his upright supporters. Entitle us to the shafa'ah of Imam al-Hussain in dunya and in akhirah. Rahimallah man yakra'a surat al-Fatiha ma'as salawat.
آپ ہیں کہاں، 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 آپ ہیں کہاں. شب رو شبیر دیتے تھے یہ رو رو کے صدا، آپ ہیں کہاں، آپ ہیں کہاں، آپ ہیں کہاں، آپ ہیں کہاں. ہے جہاں پر آپ ہم کو بھی بلا لیجیے وہیں، آپ کی فرقت میں دل کو چین اب آتا نہیں. یاد ہم کو آ رہی ہے آپ کی بے انتہا، آپ ہیں کہاں، آپ ہیں کہاں، آپ ہیں کہاں. دل پھٹا جاتا ہے ہم کیسے بھلائے آپ کو. ایک بار آتے تو اماں حال میرا دیکھ لو. آنکھ سے آنسو رواں ہے، دل تڑپتا ہے میرا. آپ ہیں کہاں، آپ ہیں ہے کہاں ہائے رو رو کے حسن بولے بھلا نہ پاؤں گا قبر پر نانا کی جا کر بات یہ بتلاؤں گا ہر سامنے میرے تماچا آپ کو مارا گیا ماں آپ ہے کہاں آپ ہے کہاں آپ ہے کہاں آپ ہے جانتی تھی آپ پیاسا رہ نہیں سکتا پسے فکر میں شبیر کی سوتی نہیں تھی رات بھر ڈھونڈتی ہے آپ کو آنکھیں ہماری ہر جگہ آپ ہے کہاں آپ ہے کہاں آپ ہے کہاں جب تلک زندہ ہے ہم کو خون رلائے گا یہ غم آپ کا دربار میں جانا نہیں بھولیں گے ہم کر دیا امت نے ہائے آپ کو ہم سے جدا آپ ہے کہاں آپ ہے کہاں آپ ہے دیکھ کر چہرہ ہمارا چین آتا تھا تمہیں دور ہم سے ہو گئی کیا بھول پاؤ گی ہمیں دیکھیے نوحہ مسلسل ہے یہی شبیر کا آپ ہے کہاں آپ ہے کہاں آپ ہے کہاں سن کے نوحہ اشک بارہ لے ازا ہونے لگے قبر میں حسنین ماں کی یاد میں رونے لگے جس گھڑی ذیشان اور عمران نے نوحہ پڑھا آپ ہے کہاں 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 آپ ہے کہاں
السلام علیک یا رسول اللہ السلام علیک یا نبی اللہ السلام علیک یا امیر المؤمنین السلام علیک یا سید الوصیین السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة النساء العالمين. السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله الحسين أيها الشهيد بكربلاء. السلام على 9 المعصومين من ذريتك علي بن الحسين زين العابدين ومحمد بن علي الباقر وجعفر بن محمد الصادق وموسى بن جعفر الكاظم وعلي بن موسى الرضا ومحمد بن علي التقي الجواد وعلي بن محمد النقي الهادي والحسن بن علي العسكري. السلام عليك يا صاحب العصر والأمر والزمان. السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن. السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان. الأمان 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 من فتنة الزمان. عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك وجعلنا من أنصارك وأعوانك ورحمة الله وبركاته.